Well, hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Great news, my friends. It's time once again to dive into that tense, terrifying, yet always terrific world of Rod Serling's Twilight Zone. This time specifically Season 2, Episode 20, Static. There's nothing to it but to do it. If you could do me a quick favor though and hit that like button, smash that subscribe, ring that bell for notifications. It greatly helps out a small channel and allows me to alert you next time it's time for a Twilight Zone or any of our sci-fi fare. And of course, if there's anything that we do that you would like earlier in its full-length format, the link to our Patreon is in the description. And if you're not a fan of Patreon, consider YouTube memberships. You'll get all of our episodes at least a day early. But my dear, dear friends, all that is then and this is now. And what is now? Now it's time for Static, the 20th episode of the second season of the one and only Twilight Zone. Prepare to engage maximum warp reaction. And away we go. I think this one's filmed with videotape.
That's my piece. You're black. Oh, yes.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Very good. Very good.
Why is he so mad that he won?
The new chlorophyll cigarette. The smoke that doesn't smell like tobacco, but smells good. Green, cool, like grass.
A pretty song and ruin. Isn't that wonderful? Just ruin. Quickly ruin a beautiful song.
But the audio balancing's way off on this. At least for me.
Just look at this land, folks. Look at it. It's flat. It's great. It's undeveloped.
What point is he trying to make?
People...
I can't even hear what he's saying either.
An oasis, yes.
Only green. The new green, cool.
Oh, we're back
Yes,
to...
let's all
the touch,
roll in the
the
grass.
smell,
The green,
the new
cool.
chlorophyll.
Dude, get out of here. We're watching the Western. Let's see what Jim and Spock are up to down here. Reminded me of City on the Edge of Forever. No.
Hey, Mr. Lindsey, what's that?
Mr. Lindsey.
Don't you know what a radio is, boy?
Well, sure, but I've never seen one like that before.
No one ever saw one quite like that. Because that's a very special sort of radio. Now, with its fabric-covered speakers, its peculiar yellow dial, its serrated knobs,
Oh my God.
Mr. Ed Lindsey is going to find out how strange very soon when he tunes into the Twilight Zone.
Some weird tech stuff going on in this one that is different.
Well, what do you got there, Ed?
What's it look like?
A radio.
Now, let's put it down here.
Okay, well then you answered your own question, bud.
Need any help, Ed?
Oh, no. I wouldn't want to disturb you, Professor. Pick it up with the legs, boy. That's it. Oh, careful. Take it right. That's it, boy.
That crazy old Ed.
Works. They made things to last in those days, boy.
Hey, that's pretty wonderful, all right.
It's like I'm gonna sit here and clap on the 2 and 5. There you go, bud. My man here would have loved, and I mean loved, the internet.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, with the strains of Getting Sentimental Over You, Tommy Dorsey and his orchestra bid you all a very pleasant good night.
Ah, it's April, and I'm watching this in April. Don't bang
This
it,
is
man.
station WPDA in Cedarburg, New Jersey.
Good evening, friends, and once again the wheel of chance, our fate, as you please, is about to revolve. And where she stops, nobody knows. Nor does anybody know what will happen when these young people step in.
Well, what do you want?
I just thought you'd like to know that dinner's ready.
I ain't hungry.
You know how Mrs. Nielsen feels about it.
Oh, all right.
I just want to make sure that it's on purpose and not because you'd forgotten that food is available.
I'm not that old yet.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
This guy must be a joy to live with in this boarding house.
Mm-hmm. It's called I'm Getting Sentimental Over You. I heard it on the radio this afternoon.
Well, that's an old tune, isn't it?
Yeah, Tommy Dorsey. They're playing it direct from the...
Direct? Tommy Dorsey's dead.
You don't say.
Yeah, he died a few years ago.
I heard both Major Bose and Tommy Dorsey this afternoon on the radio.
Couldn't be.
Couldn't be. Bragg, how is it that a man with such a tiny brain could have such a big mouth?
Well, I mean, it could be a recording here.
Local radio station was broadcasting recordings of some of the old programs.
They didn't have tape back in those days.
No, but they did have wire, and before that, discs.
And I'll tell you what else they had. Good music, Professor? Plays that meant something. Mr. Bragg doubts it. Mr. Bragg, who watches television until his brain turns into oatmeal and his eyes roll down his face into his beard. Mr. Bragg, the modern man, doubts it.
The crazy thing about this, they're almost doing this like a radio play.
Now, that guy's nuts. That's all. He's nuts.
Oh, Miss Brown, you can thank your lucky stars you never married that man.
That was right.
I'm sorry, I can't wait. Gunfire's on in exactly 4 minutes. Gunfire.
Oh my, everybody, it's time for gunfire. Because where there's smoke, there's fire.
What station it was?
The station? No, I...
Yeah, W...
Yes. You know, the announcer said something about station WPDA, that is.
Yeah, WPDA.
Why don't you come up to my room? Listen to it on a real radio. Come on, Professor.
We can make out. See, it's like they're using musical interludes to do the scene changes. This is very much like all one shot. You can hear people talking instead of reactionary shots. This is very radio drama, and I guess that's what they're trying.
Maybe they're having some kind of transmitting trouble. Why don't we phone the station?
Let's just give them a call. Hey, guys, what's up? This is Mr. Lindsey.
That's a radio station, WPDA. Yes. Heard Major Bose. Remember Major Bose? Sure. Round and round she goes, and where she stops. Yes. Oh?
They told you that WPDA went out of business 30 years ago.
Oh, the operator said, according to her supervisor, that WPDA had been out of business for 13 years.
Well, maybe you had some other state or even another country. This thing has short wave, doesn't it?
But the announcer said Cedarburg. Maybe it's...
New Jersey, yeah.
I heard it. I know I did.
Professor, is it so impossible?
Impossible? Well, now that's a dangerous sort of a word to use nowadays, Vinny. You know, we take things for granted today that we called impossible just a few years ago.
Okay.
Then what did I hear?
The past. The music is exceptionally loud. What do you all think? Like, in comparison to the dialogue is like taking second fiddle to the sound effects and the music.
Do you really think he heard those programs?
Vinny, I believe he thinks he did.
For an address by the President of the United States, Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Since my annual message to the Congress on January 4th last...
Is it a fireside chat? This is an interesting... This one is kind of throwing me a little bit just because of its presentation.
Vinny, I've got it. I've really got it. Come quick.
Why bother? You won't hear nothing but static.
He said the thing. The thing was said, everybody.
He's gone completely psychological.
You're right.
Back to my knitting.
It was Tommy Dorsey. He was playing I'm Getting Sentimental Over You. It was soft and slow, real pretty.
Again? Same song again?
Well, you just keep on trying, Ed. We're bound to hear it eventually.
Sure. We're bound to.
Oh, Ed, you're gonna get labeled as losing your mind, buddy.
I just thought we might talk a little. Do you mind?
No, talk away. Just don't come too close. I might start climbing the walls, barking like a dog. That's what you think, isn't it? That's what y'all think. Poor old Ed. He's gone ding-dong, lost his marbles.
No, that's not what I think at all.
No, Ed, we think you're an asshole, but in addition to that, we'd like to have a conversation.
You're just about the meanest, sourest,
yeah, dude,
most cantankerous old man on the face of the earth.
Thanks.
We've been living like two hermits under the same roof for the last 20 years. Staring at each other every morning, day in, day out. 20 long years, wondering what went wrong.
I don't know what you're talking
about.
about.
Yes, you do. You know exactly what I'm talking about, but you won't admit it.
we had the picture of her, right?
We were going to be married.
Oh, no, Fanny, for heaven's sake.
Don't get your back up. I'm not trying to change anything.
She's really good.
We met in this boarding house in 1940. But your mother was ill, you remember, and so you decided to wait. And that's just what we did.
The war?
By the time your mother died, it was too late.
But, Vinny, I'm not going to sit here and
Don't
listen
interrupt
to you
me. I know you don't care anything about me now. I'm just a silly woman who watches television, dyes her hair, grows old. You don't even like me anymore. And I don't blame you.
He doesn't like anybody.
We had our chance and missed it, Ed. You did love me as much as a man ever loved a woman.
You had a window.
Yes, Vinny. That's true, I did, yes.
How sad, and then to sit there and like look at each other for 20 years?
So just about this time every year would have been our anniversary.
Oh, God.
You want to go back to 1940 and start all over again. Why do you think you keep hearing Getting Sentimental Over You on the radio?
Was that your song?
That was our song, Ed. When you hear those programs, you're like a young man again, with all of your life ahead of you.
Jesus.
You think that I'm just imagining that
Ed.
I hear the radio, don't you? That's what you think. That's not true at all.
You didn't hear a word she said, did you? Jesus, dude. Wow. Brother, really?
Hello?
You didn't hear a word she said. Immediately made it about you. You think I'm crazy? Dude, just opened up her heart to you.
Somebody, I say, somebody now.
Yes, I know.
Claghorn's the name, Senator Claghorn.
I know. You're from Dixie.
When I eat
Why are you sitting on the floor, buddy?
Say, what's that funny-looking thing, huh? You know, when I first started listening to radio again, I kept wondering, whatever happened to the picture tube? And then I remembered, the picture tube is right here. Radio, I tell you, radio is a world that has to be believed to be seen.
Okay. The white jackets are going to be coming for you, buddy. Oh my God, is it gone? Why would they take it?
I was just up to my room and my radio's disappeared. Now, do you know anything about it? What
Ed,
happened
calm
to it?
down.
The junk dealers.
The junk dealer?
We were only trying.
You gave my radio to the junk dealer?
Dear God. I don't see how this helps anybody. I know that they're trying to help, but... Well, you don't have the kid here to help you with it.
This is private property. You got no right.
Well, this belongs to me.
Oh, no, it don't. Now, if you want to buy it,
Well,
that's...
how much? How much?
Oh, take a look at it. That's a beautiful piece of furniture.
Oh, for God's sakes, dude.
Better still work, I can tell you that. 'Cause if it don't, it's going to cost you. It's going to cost a lot of people.
If it does still work, I don't understand that scene.
In Chicago, Tommy Dorsey and his band.
Thank God.
I'd like to go back too, buddy, but I'm not sure this is the way, man.
Vinny, Tommy Dorsey from the Aragon Ballroom.
I know, dear. It's on this time every Thursday. And then there's Ed Wynn and Fred Allen and... What is the matter with you?
Oh, man.
Dear Vinny.
Around and around she goes, and where she stops, nobody knows.
Oh, wow.
All Ed Lindsey knows is that he desperately wanted a second chance, and he finally got it. Through a strange and wonderful time machine called a radio in the Twilight Zone.
All right, everybody, we just finished watching The Twilight Zone Season 2, Episode 20, Static, and the only thing left to do is talk about it. All right, everybody, we just finished Static, the 20th episode of the second season of the mighty Twilight Zone. This one started off rough for me simply because maybe it might even be the version that's on Paramount Plus, and I don't want to kind of lay it at their feet. This was definitely something that I think the mix or something hasn't made it. You know, I don't know if it needs to be remastered or even completely. I'm not sure. I'm not tech enough to understand how all that, the older recordings and things like that can be brought up to speed, but more so than in any other Twilight Zone that I've encountered, and really any of the older stuff that I've watched, like the same time period, 50s, 60s, this one, for whatever reason, at the top of this episode, had a real bad balance problem, for my mind, between the music and the dialogue, and the TV and the dialogue, and the radio and the dialogue. I mean, I understand that at one point Lindsey was supposed to, at the very top of this episode, when he goes up there and he's messing around with the different channels on the TV, I understand that Lindsey's supposed to be kind of muffled and muttering and things like that. But I mean, at certain points during that, he's completely mute. Like, you can see his mouth moving. You can hear clips coming through. But whatever he's trying to say is lost. And whatever everybody else is trying to say is muted way too much. So the initial comparison was obviously between like the visual medium of television and the auditory medium of radio. And again, I still kind of stick with the idea that at least in parts and sort of like transitionary moments, they really seemed like they were going the radio drama route, which was just, I mean, more so than most our Twilight Zones are very actor intensive, where they have very long shots, a lot of moving parts in the shots. We don't cut away, everything is kind of laid at the feet of the actors. We're going to treat this like a play. Don't mess up. We're going to go a minute, 2, 3, 5. So that's not something that's out of the ordinary for the Twilight Zone, but this one in particular, and I think it was probably a combination of the videotape too, making it look a little different, that made me think that the presentation of this actually reminded me of a radio drama. Now, whether or not that's what they were going for, the comparison was there, and they were using the static and the rise of the music and things like that to differentiate. Like, if you closed your eyes and you could hear the static come up or hear the music come up, you would know that you were in a transition. You would know that you are in now a new scene. And again, that's the imagination being the director of a radio drama. It would help to kind of set the place. They did a couple of those kind of pull-in shots too that usually indicate travel or transition. I'm thinking of when the young boy and Lindsey were carrying the radio up the stairs, and they kind of drew into the cloth-covered speaker mesh, and then they kind of pulled back out of it to indicate that they're going to be somewhere else whenever we kind of refocus this. And that was interesting to me. There certainly wasn't, for lack of, taking risks and trying something different with the production value, with the long shots. It was the audio mix that was initially the most jarring for me, that it was difficult to kind of follow, because even Rod seemed muted, whenever he did his intro. Rod seemed so muted that it almost was like, okay, who's talking? And then whenever the radio passed by and you see him standing there, it was muted to the point where it's almost like they didn't have the environmental mics where they needed to be. Like, they just weren't picking these things up in the greatest effect. And again, I don't know to lay that at production's feed or in like what happened in the recording side or the editing or any of that stuff. So I don't know, and it could just be me. It could be the copy that I was watching. And I don't want to go all in on this, but that's what threw me in the first part of the episode. Now, when we get to the second back half of the episode, it's where the old what's really happening in the Twilight Zone takes place. And so, there's always, ever since you all started telling me, oh, are you sure he was alive, Greg? Or, hey, is that what really happened? I started thinking about these alternatives that we could possibly have. So it just lends itself to this, did he lose his mind? Did he die on the floor there? Whenever he kind of pulled the pillows off the floor and laid him down and sat there and closed his eyes for a second, did he die? Did they have him committed? Did he, lose his mind completely and just had these sort of flashbacks to 1940? And again, I would obviously like to think that what we saw transpire actually occurred. And he was able to transport himself in that place 20 years prior to 1940, have a second shot at love, a second shot at life. But with the Twilight Zone, you're never able to fully say, yes, that's definitely what happened. He made it to Willoughby. And they show where Willoughby actually was. And you're like, oh, did he really make it? So you have to ask that question in Static, too. Did Lindsey make it where he thought he went to? And we've had several of those. We've had several episodes where the ending, or at least what could be conceived or perceived, but we've had several of those. We've had several episodes where the ending, at least the perception of the ending, could be taken as a victory. You know, oh, he made it back, or oh boy, the imaginary world that he thought that he was playing in a movie was actually real, and he found his family, that type of stuff. You know, all of these things that seem to work out. Hey, it worked out, everybody. And then you're reminded it's the Twilight Zone, and you're reminded by Rod at the outro that all of these things, you know, the visiting of the Twilight Zone, the hearing of these old shows, they were being broadcast from the Twilight Zone. What does that really mean? And are we looking at a miracle? Are we looking at magic? Or are we looking at the end of somebody's life? And again, I think there's always arguments to be made for like the realistic ending and the fantasy ending. And again, it's one of the charms of the Twilight Zone. But for me, I think it's my long-winded way of saying, for me, it all boils down to kind of a tale of two cities, so to speak. The first half of this episode, just because of the issues that we mentioned, it was hard for me to get traction with it. You know, I didn't know how to feel about everybody. It seemed sort of, not necessarily just bland or generic, but there wasn't any catch or hold for the first part. We were watching people watch or listen to entertainment, and there's usually nothing wrong with that. But, you know, you have these characters that we didn't really get moving too much until we got to the second half of the episode. And again, I'm not sure exactly in the second half, the scene where they sold it to the junk dealer and he went down to get it and brought it back up. I mean, I'm sure that there's some type of metaphor that can be gleaned from that type of voyage and passage of trying to recapture something. But at the same time, you know, that could have been a trigger for when he died, or, you know, if you're looking at it in that particular lens. But in the same time, I think the second half was much stronger, given that we had that great conversation between the two of them. It set up sort of like the idea that this was a fantasy for him that was being fully stoked into flame because of the mistakes that were made 20 years ago. And so that's you know, classic Twilight Zone right there. But regardless, it was a good episode that just kind of stumbled, for me, stumbled a little bit to get its footing. But when it did, it hit that Twilight Zone stride just a little later than a lot of the other ones that we've had. But friends, I've said it once, I'll say it again. Any episode of the Twilight Zone is like pizza. You know, even if you don't like it as much as some of your other pizza, it's still pizza. Friends, if you could do me a favor, hit that like button, smash that subscribe, ring that bell for notifications. It greatly helps out a small channel and allows me to alert you next time it's time to journey into the Twilight Zone or any of our sci-fi fare. And of course, if there's anything that we do that you would like early or in its full-length format, the link to our Patreon is in the description. And if you're not a fan of Patreon, consider YouTube memberships. You'll get all of our episodes at least a day early. But my dear friends, all that is then and this is now, and now unfortunately it's time for us to say goodbye from this, the 20th episode of the second season of the Twilight Zone, Static. But where should we say goodbye from? Well, normally in all of our other reaction series that we watch, we, as the Greek chorus, we pick up the job of the original creatives. We go out and we find people that haven't seen the shows that we're watching, and we tell them, hey, you should really check these out. And thus, we continue to expand the audience decades after they've come out, much like the Twilight Zone. But with the Twilight Zone, while we can do that and increase the audience, we say goodbye from this particular moment as the Greek chorus as a result of watching the Twilight Zone. So I pose to you this question, my friends. There's a time in your life, there's a song that is played. It has to be at least 20 years ago for you. But what is that song? What is that place? And if you were by yourself and you turned on your boom box or your Walkman or your radio or, you know, your phonograph or wherever it happened to be, what song would be playing there? And for me, I think it would be maybe a little Edward Money. Friends, until such time as we can journey into the Twilight Zone again, Vulcan roll, and I'll see you.